everybody, welcome to my first kind of tutorial, I guess. There's not too many instructions, but I do walk you along my process with this water balloon, and hopefully you can follow along all right. But these are the materials that I used during this video to make this watercolor balloon, and you don't need these exact materials. You can use whatever materials you have on hand, but do try and use a watercolor paper though. That will help you get better results in the end. Oh, and here we have just a little image of my paints, and I'm just gonna wax off the paints here really quick, and then I'm gonna wax on my sweet watercolor paper. My effects, I'm having good fun, you guys. Now we can get started drawing our balloon. Okay, now we're gonna start with our actual watercolor balloon drawing. This is a pretty easy way to start experimenting with watercolors because you don't have to draw anything really complicated to start with. We're starting out just by sketching a simple balloon shape right now. And see, I couldn't even draw an oval properly at the first shot. I had to erase it and try it again. That's one thing I tend to tell my students, is to never be afraid to erase. Those lines that you make initially are not the lines you need to stick with. Oh, here's my little string. The way to make a twisty string look good is to have wide spaces and narrow spaces. It's hard to see right now when it's just pencil, but once we start painting it, it'll be easier for you to spot. Now I'm just adding in some water everywhere I want my balloon color to be, which is going to be blue. I'm going to paint this guy a bright, pretty blue. I'm making sure as I'm placing my water down to avoid any area that I want to have a bright, bright highlight. That highlight is going to stay completely white. And the only way, or the best way, I suppose, to keep a super bright highlight in your watercolors is leaving that white space as you go. You can always add in white later, but I don't know, some purists don't approve of adding in white later, but it doesn't bother me. I do add in white here or there, depending on the picture, depending on if I've lost that highlight or not. But here I've made a particular effort to keep that white highlight in, just from the paper showing through. There you can see it start to pop out there a little bit. You see what I'm doing with my paintbrush is a lot of scrubbing, back and forth scrubbing. I'm actually quite nervous in this video. This is the second video I've put an audio track down for, but this was the first video I recorded with the intent to put it on YouTube. So I sat down nervous as heck, I guess, and I just barreled through it. Did all of this in one shot, fast. As you'll see coming up here, I have a lot of blow dry. There it is. There's my blow dryer sneaking in there. Yeah, I blow dried all over the place for this painting because I wanted to do it all in one sitting. In later videos, I had started stopping my video when I was blow drying things in between layers, but for this one I just didn't think of it. I suppose this is my first video that I recorded, so I just sped them up quite a lot instead of editing them all out. I suppose I could have done that either way. Now I'm adding another layer of blue to my watercolor balloon. When you're making a watercolor, the best thing is to start out incredibly light first layer. You can barely see the layer. It's so light. And then you add layers. That's how you create depth with watercolors, is many, many layers of semi-translucent color. So now I'm adding on a darker area. And see how I'm leaving these lighter blue spots on the side? I'm going to have a lighter band nearly all the way around my balloon, because that's where the light shows through the easiest, on those thin edges of my balloon. Oh, there's the blow dryer again. You'll see him a lot. I should give him a name. He makes such an appearance. He's practically a character, that blow dryer. I don't remember if I mentioned this earlier. I did, but I'm not sure if I should really reiterate to be careful with your paper and not scrub your brush like I have been doing through this whole thing, because it wrecks your paper. Oh, here I'm erasing the pencil lines on my balloon so that it's just pretty watercolors now. It's not little graphite scribbles showing through. Now that I know exactly where my balloon is, I don't need those pencil lines anymore. I'm leaving them for the string yet because I haven't started the string. Here I am with a smaller brush, coming in, adding in some specific color variations. I wanted this video not to be too short because I wanted you guys to be able to follow along. But I also didn't want it to be too long either. I mean, who wants to sit here and watch me painting a balloon for an hour? Certainly not anybody that I know, after all. So it's sped up. Don't expect to take as much time as this video to draw your balloon. Take at least an hour or an hour and a half to slowly build up your layers. You can go into the YouTube settings and slow this video down too if it's going a little fast for you. Oh, here I am, I think, starting to lift up some layers here. Watercolors are nice because you can re-wet an area that is a little darker than you want it to be, and then carefully blot the color off with your paper towel. That's one of the prettiest ways to get subtle highlights in your watercoloring, is just lifting the color back out. You don't even have to use a paper towel like I do. You can use a dry brush. We'll suck up some of that excess color after it's been re-wetted. Here's my hairdryer again. I am glad that I decided to stop videos for hair drying in the future. It's silly, isn't it? It looks like the nose of an elephant every once in a while, sticking its way into the frame. That's okay. Now we're starting on the string. I like the string. Oh, there's my hair. Man, this is certainly my first video recording. So we learn, I guess. All right, now here's the trick with making a windy, bendy ribbon for your balloon, is you start out with a light gray base, even lighter than what I started with, even would be easier than how I went about it. But you start with a light gray base, and then you use that technique that I just told you about, lifting the color up by re-wetting areas and then blotting it up. I'm taking out the color everywhere that the ribbon is broadest, because that is the area that's going to catch the light the most. All you're really doing in a painting is representing areas of shadow and areas of light, and how light hits objects. And if you start paying more attention to how light hits an object and how shadows form from an object, your drawings will increase in quality by leaps and bounds very quickly. Just pay attention and look for little details. See, now I'm darkening up some of these areas that are shadowed. I want a nice contrast between where the ribbon turns away from the light and where the ribbon is then indeed facing the light. That's the best way to get it looking nice. What am I doing now? Mixing colors? Mixing some colors here. There's some yellow and some brown, a little bit of gold. Looks like I'm getting into the background here. As you'll see now coming up, I'm going to wet the entire paper around my balloon, being careful not to let water into the main balloon drawing. Your paint won't go where there's not water. That's one of the beauties of watercolor. So as long as you put your water down everywhere the balloon is not, then it should stay crisp. Your main subject, which is a balloon right now, should stay crisp. And I'm just basically toning my whole paper down with this coffee color. This coffee color that doesn't look great right now, but it'll come together. Just you wait. And basically I'm toning this paper so that the brightest white spot on the entire page is my pretty shiny balloon highlights right there. If you want a really bright highlight on any particular thing that you're painting, make sure that those highlights are the only white represented in the whole piece. That's one way to make it really pop out of the page. Value contrast, I'm always telling my students, is the key to a drawing or a painting or an illustration that pops off the page. See there, I didn't like quite how dark and uneven that coffee color was, so I'm lifting out a little bits of the color here and there with my paintbrush until it's reached a tone that I like, I suppose. There's my hairdryer again. I'm gonna call you Dumbo because you look like an elephant. Dumbo the hairdryer, always sticking his nose in. There we go. Man, that is fast. I sped up those clips with the hairdryer to ridiculous degrees. Alright, back to our main balloon here, adding in some nice dark tones now. Now I know where all my light tones are going to be, and I know where all my dark tones are going to be, so I can go in there and be a little more liberal with my color placement. I'm just going to swoosh in. Now, I keep telling you to add in darks where it's darkest and lights where it's lightest. And to do that, it's really important for you to have a reference drawing. And that's just a picture that you can look at and study and observe through your own mental powers of observation where things are dark and where things are light. And don't worry if you don't get it right immediately. That you have to train your eye to see all of the tiny little value contrasts in a subject, but it's definitely worth it because you see the world in a whole new way once you've trained your eye. See, here's my paper getting all messed up. I was far too vigorous with this balloon drawing. See all those little specks on the bottom left? That's all my paper coming up where I do not want it to. I'm used to using a smoother paper. I think this one is, hold on, I've bought it before, so I should be able to pull it up here. This one's a Strathmore Visual Watercolor Journal. It's 140 pounds, which is the same as my regular paper. But this one is a cold press. A cold press paper has a lot of texture to it, which can give you some really nice effects in watercolors, but it's not what I normally work with, so I'm being too rough with this watercolor paper here, and it's just pulling up all of that texture with my sporadic brush strokes. But that's okay. That's okay. Imperfections in art is part of the learning process. Oh, look, I'm pushing my paper right off the screen here. Oh, push yourself back over, balloon drawing. Oh, there's Dumbo again. At least he pushed over my sketchbook. There, see, I added a little bit of darker lines around the darkest shadowy edge of my ribbon for contrast against that lighter coffee background. And it's shaping up. It's shaping up. That one spot on the paper is, well, I will warn you, it's not getting better. It's only going to get worse from here on out. But you persevere, and it eventually comes together decently at the end, but it's a journey. It's a long journey. Oh, there it goes. There goes my paper. Messed up. There, just scrubbing. That doesn't help. Scrubbing does not help. Never helps. And there, look, smeared stuff. This is just part of the lesson. This is the lesson on continuing on when you make mistakes, because all practice is good practice. It doesn't matter how it turns out. I'll see, and I use that smear to do this thing. I've seen many watercolor videos on YouTube, because you learn by observing. That's how everybody learns. But I've always seen it, and they add cool water swooshes, like water splatters, unevenness, non-uniformity to their watercolor drawings to add, I guess, artistic appeal. And I've always wanted to try that, to see if it looked cool. Always wanted to give it a shot. So I used that accidental smear to, just go for it. Go for my cool watercolor effects. Got some splatter in there. I got that cool top smear, nice and rivuletty like that, by just blowing on it with my breath like that. It was, I've used that a number of times. I just like the splatter effect that it gives you. Here's Dumbo again, popping up. Geez, that section of that balloon is, it just gets on my nerves. But accepting imperfection is part of being an artist, I think, because nothing is ever perfect. And here's my little bit of white acrylic paint that I am mixing with a little bit of water to smooth it out and give it a little bit of translucence. And I'm adding in a couple of extra highlights to my balloon, just some places that I've covered over a little bit and that I wanted to really bring back out. A lot of people argue that this makes my balloon here not a real watercolor, because it does have those little bits of acrylic highlights. And that's why I tend to call myself a multimedia artist, because I don't use just one. I use whatever medium is necessary to do what I want it to do. And that can mean anything at any given day. So here I added in some highlights to the string too, you noticed, just to up that contrast. Added in a couple line highlights to those open spots of the ribbon. And now I'm going to go through and just make sure my center of the balloon is the darkest spot on the whole balloon, because the center of the balloon is where it's the thickest and the light doesn't show through as easily as it does on the edges. So it's going to be darker at the top toward the middle than it is going to be anywhere else. And on the plus side, that darker tone is also going to help cover up that awful paper spot that I hate. But it's strange that you can really hate something in a drawing, but then by the end of it it turns out fine and adds character to your overall design, I think. So here's to embracing chaos, I guess. That little weird texture in my balloon. Now I'm just crisping up this edge. I want my edge, even with my little watercolor swooshes there, I want my edges to really pop, to up the 3D effect of this balloon. And I'm just going to add some more dark colors to my swooshes, because if I'm going to go crazy messy, I'm not going halfway. They're going to be bright, messy color swooshes. There we go. That looks great. I like it. I like it. I think after this video I might have gone in with a couple more touch-ups, especially to that spot where that paper is messed up there in the bottom left. But overall, this is it. And I really like the background contrast. I really like how it makes my highlights pop. This was a nice balloon. And if you don't like how your balloon turned out, all I can say is draw more balloons. I mean, try it again. Do it some more. Try and challenge yourself to use more layers than you did last time. Tiny layers build up into a really gorgeous, gorgeous balloon. Here's a couple more highlights. See, I put too much white and then I just dab it off, and that gives it a little bit of a smeared look. A couple more tiny details right here. The great thing about watercolors is that you can add more of the same color on top of the same color, and it looks like a different color. It looks like a darker color, and that's because of tone more than anything. You're just creating a richer texture on the whole piece. Try and be more relaxed than I am for this video when you do your watercolor paintings. Try and do smooth, one-directional brush strokes. That'll help. And it ends up being kind of meditative in the end. Smooth, one-directional brush strokes. None of this manic scrubbing that you've observed here. Oh, look, it's all done. I think I've got a nice still image here at the end instead of my waving it about. Yeah, there it is. It looks really good. I like this balloon. I think it turned out well. I think it pops off the page nicely. And I hope you had some nice balloons too. I hope you made a balloon along with me. If you did, I'd love to see it. Please contact me and let me know if you drew a balloon along with me. And thank you for coming to my newest video, watercolor balloon painting for beginners. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a great day. Goodbye, you guys.